So, I am a human, first and foremost, not a cyclist. That's kind of what I've come around to realize after my summer and fall exploration, re-exploration of being a cyclist and the mindset that entails after my 7 years in Portland, where I was pretty hardcore. And I did food out bombs, year-round pickups in the rain and snow, and Mount Hood adventures and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's telling because if I backtrack towards the later part of my time in Portland in like 2018, 2019, and then even the half year where I was still there in 2020, I just didn't cycle as much because I became a little less active in doing stuff for one. One of the big things too is I wasn't seeing anyone romantically, which like that's, you go and see the bay, your honey sweetheart, and for one period of time that was like all the way across town in Northeast. I was down in Woodstock even at one point, and that was a heck of a jaunt. It was like 7.5 miles, like over an hour. And then another person I was seeing later was also kind of out there from like inner Southeast to outer Southeast. I remember that bike commute for a romantic entanglement. And then my romantic connections were petering out later on. But but yeah, and then of course I wasn't really working much. I was doing some odd jobs here and there, and in fact that was one of the few times I was cycling. I was cycling out to the Mercado, but I even could have just taken the bus, and deducted $5 or whatever from my pay to do that if I really had to. But that's really, in an urban environment of any good size, having a bike is pretty critical for getting around because most people have a regular commute. I have to be here on these days over and over and over again, whether that be school or work or volunteering gigs, that kind of thing. And so once I've been kind of out of the system a bit, so in those later years, I just wasn't doing as much. And my one big volunteering thing was teaching kaleidoscope yoga at the co-op, and I could walk there, you know, and that was fine. That was, very reasonable. But but yeah, it's just interesting how I in my head I've done a kind of an about face, even though I haven't completely given up on the notion of me being this bike touring, bike camping person. But I went into this endeavor thinking at the very least I'll have a bike that I can use while I'm here in Corvallis, and that seems like a reasonable thing. Whether I go full on crazy living off of it is another thing, and I can always sell it. And so I'm still in that position, but just over the last few weeks, I think especially with the weather change, it also reminded me of, yeah, like I don't have to even be cycling right now because I don't have to do anything really. I don't have to pick up 35 pounds of Oda tofu on a blustery Saturday when it's 45 and raining, and that's kind of nice to have that option. Um, but yeah, I think the things that kind of led me to lean more towards not doing the bike mode is, I guess, three main things. Mostly mechanical hiccups, okay? And this is the one thing I really didn't like about my time even in Portland, and I leaned on my buddy Joel, God bless him, for a lot of my random stuff like the drivetrain, replacement cables, shifter cable breaks, and all that stuff you can really do at home watching a YouTube tutorial. But having somebody hands-on that can do it in 5 minutes with your help is great. And we replaced the bottom bracket one time, and I think that was pretty much it. I didn't really do a ton of bike maintenance, besides the changing the brake pads, and I changed out like tire once or twice. Changed out my tires. It's like super easy. A bunch of flats. I've had like 15 or 20 flats at least over my time in Portland. And but I wasn't very kind to my bike either. Like I didn't clean it enough. I didn't really keep up on the brakes rotating out because I was so moneyless during those years. And my tires, I also pushed it. You could see the purple inner liner a lot for like a period of time. I think those were my original tires that had the purple liner that were indicating of like, you need to change this out before it explodes on you. And yeah, so I was always kind of like, some people take to the mechanical more, so they really enjoy it. There's an enjoyable aspect of tinkering and fixing and solving these problems and maintenance, and I just never really liked it. I never liked growing up when my dad was always trying to foist car maintenance lessons on me, and I was like, this thing is cold, metallic, dirty as hell. you know Foreign entity. And there's something too about, I'm more of a digital guy, and the thing about like analog stuff always kind of freaks me out in a way, because it's like you can strip things, you can like damage things, and you can't just like reboot, reset, and try again and again like in a digital landscape on a computer or something, where you can troubleshoot, and it's not a hardware thing, but it's all hardware with a bike. you know and the bike really, like, it's interesting how I had time away from it and then getting back on it. It's like, it is a vehicle. It is a human powered vehicle. And it really is treated as such under the law, too, for a good reason, even though it's only 25 or 30 pounds, as opposed to the 3,000-pound cousin vehicle, like automobiles. This thing is still a vehicle. It's freaking fast compared to walking. And in fact, after all my many hours of walking around Corvallis a million times over, I almost kind of missed it a little bit sometimes, because I would go out and I would do my little route on my bike. And the thing is, when I'm on my bike, I kind of want to keep moving. Like, I don't want to take little stops, because like I'm well rested, I'm not hurting from gravity, because the bike is taking all the pressure and the gravity, which is the nice thing about it. And so you're just kind of zipping around, and you like that zipping around energy, so you're not just going to like camp out for 30 minutes to an hour because your feet are tired, or you want to rest something. So it's definitely a different rhythm. It was almost too fast at times, where I would just kind of zip around and then have to redo the loop because there's only 15 square miles is pretty small. There's not a whole lot you can really do here in town that's like reasonable and safe and doesn't involve a lot of traffic. But other mechanical weird things, so like just weird things were happening, and I'm always trying to be mindful of, like, are these little signs that stuff's not really smooth and easeful? Am I in the right mindset, in the right place to even re-embark upon the Cyclist manifesto, as it were? And just weird things, like on the hybrid bike, I took it out one time and I was fiddling with the seat, and the seat clamp bolt shot off. It sheared off on me. It was like ping, and so I rode home with like a almost like a stuck seat post, is what it would be. Is like where a lot of times if it's a steel bike, it has like a stuck seat post with the rust factor. But this thing, it wouldn't. You can't raise it if you can't lock it, so it was all the way at the bottom. And so I kind of rode home often off the saddle, so I didn't hurt my knees. But that was kind of bizarre. Never had that happen in Portland. And so I had, I went in, found the bolt, and had that all sorted out. But just these little things like that. And then when I got the rock hopper, took it home, was fine. Thought it, was cool. And then I took it out later on its like maiden voyage, and I was coming down this sidewalk kind of thing in the middle of the park, and it just hit just right on the rear, and I had like a blowout, which I guess was like a pinch flat. But I've never had that in all my years in Portland. Never had just like a blowout. experience from a pinch flat. And I was like, what the hell? The maiden voyage, you know? And I thought everything was pumped up fine, you know? Just kind of weird. And I remember walking home because I didn't have a Presta valve or a Presta pump, so I couldn't really change the flat. And I thought, well, surely not on the first voyage, really, that it's going to blow out on me. But sure enough, it did. So I ended up walking it home. And I was trying to be gentle with the rear situation and lifting it up a bunch because I had about a mile to go. And then I get home and I am kind of fiddling. Well, actually, I should back up. The first funky, weird little problem was actually I changed out the seat immediately after I got home because I have like a cool cutout buzz off Italian saddle that's leather that I got for like $5 and it's worth like pretty expensive. And I changed that out, but I couldn't figure out how to like it would not clamp back on securely. So that was like weirdly dejecting, and I like left it like that for a few days until I figured it out, and then I like I said, and then I took it on its maiden voyage like that with the seat adjusted, but then the back tire issue popped up, and I'm like, what's going on? And then and so yeah, and then I changed out the tube, and then I took it on a test voyage, you know, and dumb for a mistake I made because I didn't have it. I had trouble trying to. It was just like one thing after the other. I was trying to inflate the tire, the tube, with a Presta valve adapter, and every time I was using it, it would like unscrew the Presta inner thing, and so I was like, "What is going on?" And so I went with it kind of underinflated, and I thought, oh, it's underinflated, but it's not gonna like kill anything. Well, it did, because like a half mile into the test ride number 2, I looked down at the rear tire because I felt kind of like a kerchunking feeling, and there was a split forming even, and like the tube was popping out. I'm like, great. I just wrecked this tire, and these tires are Hutchinson Pythons, and they're like nice. They're probably like at least $30 to $50, probably new. And I'm like, oh, great. I just the second time out, I ripped the tire, and maybe that even happened on the first go around, and I only noticed it on this second voyage. But I think I got it from just the underinflation pinching pinching from the tube or the rim. That's my analysis, but who knows? So once again, I'm like shit, and so I ended up walking it home, and at least it was closer this time. And it was like drizzling out and dark, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is weird, man. Like, what's going on with this thing? And I bring it back, and I'm kind of dejected once again, and I leave it for like a week or two, and I use my other bikes and fart around and have fun and blast my USB speaker at college kids, and you know, I'm enjoying life. It's fine. It's early September, I think, at that point. um, and then I find a new tire, even a nice Schwalbe Marathon or something like that, some equivalent Schwalbe bomb-proof tire, and pop that on there. And I take it on a few more rides, and I'm testing it. You know, I even take it on the critical mass ride, and I'm like, man, this thing's kind of uncomfortable. Like, I'm getting a little bit of shrimp back here where I'm straining and everything, and I don't know if it's because my saddle's kind of pointed downward, and I also can't figure that out. Maybe I didn't try a different saddle, or maybe fiddle with it some more, or the fact that it's like aggressive geometry, being a rock hopper with a you know, I think the stock stem, um, but it's pretty forward, and because it's like a mountain bike, and a lot of those are fairly aggressive. The old ones, they're like road bike geometry. And also, I have this funky Scott AT4 bar on there, which is a butterfly bar, which is kind of its own beast, its own unique beast of whatever. And I was just like, okay, like I paid $180. I thought this was the bike, the ATB, the chariot that would carry me on great adventures. And it's just like one funky little thing after another. And part of that is it's like my unfamiliarity with the bike world. Because in Portland, it was sort of just like I kept one foot in, but one foot out. Because I was like, I'm not really a gearhead. I just use it very utilitarian. It's like I didn't buy 5 bikes like every other bike nut does. Even though I ended up getting 3 bikes, I'm staring at them right now. But it's just one of those things where it's just the gear hiccups. It's just there's a fair amount, and I understand the hesitation for a lot of people. I mean, some people freak out about even changing a flat, but and they'll pay someone to change it out for them, which seems crazy because you can buy a bike for the amount that you would pay someone to change a flat. Like I got this Trek Mountain track that's a nice little bike for $30 at the OSU used store, and it's a good little, you know, it's great. And will probably end up being the bike that I have here, I think. And I'll end up selling the Elant and the Rockhopper if I finally decide to, for real, whenever that point comes to go back to just my 2 feet, you know, because the 2 feet, it's they can have their own biomechanical hiccups of your body train system, right? Like the plantar fasciitis, but it's something that you can troubleshoot and figure out and intuit and feel it because it's part of you. I don't have this separate entity, this separate steel contraption that is separate from me, and it's just its own, and it has a much higher cost in terms of like supplies and these tech. And pretty much all from like a foot mobile perspective, you have to buy shoes or footwear, and maybe a couple things wear out here and there in your pack system, but it's a far cry less fussy and frequent than a bike, you know. And I did pick up this Malay. It looks like millet is the spelling. 45 plus 10 backpack, which is like an alpine mountaineering backpack, and I picked it up thinking I would put it on the back of the rack on my bike, so I'd have the flexibility where I could use that and live out of that wherever I'm at. Like intentional community road trip, can't bring the bike for whatever reason, they don't have room in their vehicles. I just grabbed a pack, boom, I'm ready. But now I'm thinking, I think I was prescient in some ways of getting that because I think I can just live out of that, which is kind of how I had my life set up as a backup if anything changed here with my housing, or I could grab my giant 70-liter and live out of that. But I have a much more sleek and smaller setup. So now the exciting challenge is actually to go brutally efficient, minimalist, lightweight. Like the goal is 15-pound base weight, but at the bare, or I should say 15 pounds is the goal. Under 20 is like the bare minimum. So somewhere between there. Because when you add up food and water, you're going to be pushing, 25 pounds if you have a 15-pound base weight. So you want to keep it pretty minimal. And I like that idea, because I had these base weights of 25, 30 pounds. So I was pushing 30, 40 pounds total, and that's a lot. It is not fun. It's not fun at all. So I'm curious, and I think the ways I can find that lightness is through just very minimal clothing, going through some of my little ditty bag things, like I have, like my camping cordage, fire treatment, whatever kind of thing, and I can take out a few things from that, and then just a few other little odds and ends that I can streamline. Like even I had a giant spoon that I was using for a long time that I can move to a cut in half plastic MRE spoon, for example, because all these little grams add up. 28 grams is an ounce, and 16 ounces is a pound. So the things we carry, mentally, physically, spiritually. But yeah, so the mechanical stuff was like pretty much one of the main reasons why I'm reconsidering this bike mode living, and then some of the fit issues also, which I've kind of talked about a little bit with the rock hopper. But just having a bunch of weird stuff over the summer where I knew I was riding like some smaller bikes, like Barb's bike was smaller that I was first on, so obviously I was getting some weird issues with that. And also riding too high in gearing a lot of times, and not just keeping it on a lower one. So it's like when you're stopping and you go from like a red light, there should be really no struggle, no stress in the knees anywhere. But sometimes you kind of, if you have that lightness from a standstill, then when you're going, you may want to shift into a higher gear to get more rolling, and you can do that. But it's just, for me, it's kind of weird because you're in the city, you would be constantly shifting up down up down like one gear, and it's just better just find one that's like solid all around, even though you might be going a little bit slower, and just stick with that. As my as how it's how I rolled in Portland, that's how I rolled here. And then if you go up a hill, then you go into granny gear, or you get off and walk, and you save your drivetrain. So yeah, but just some fit things, like hands being more sore, and I'm like, I'm 5 years older after I quit cycling. I'm in my early 40s. It's like, is there weird arthritic stuff? I'm a little bit heavier by like 25 pounds, and I'm less in shape in general. And like knee stuff, because of the bike seat being too low, on too small a bike, reach things where there's pressure on the hands. So just a bunch of funky things dealing with some of these bikes. And the rock hopper is not too bad overall. And then the mountain track seems fine, even though it's a little small, but it's an 18-inch, which is like, I can still make it work because I'm kind of stocky, 5'10". And the rock hopper is like a 20-inch, allegedly. I think it's actually a 19.5, according to the catalog. But so yeah, but there's just some fit things, and it's sort of like it brings up the ergonomics of a human, and it's like, should we be in this position where we're kind of hunched a bit? And some people are really hunched with like a literal shrimp back, and it's like, I don't know about that. Like, people freak out about humans sitting for a long time, and then we're in these weird positions on bikes where we're kind of moving but not really, because our 3 points of contact, our butt or our sits bones and our feet and our hands, are still fairly stationary and sedentary. So that's where you get issues that crop up. And you can only do so much besides taking breaks and shifting your hand position and stuff. It's like there's definitely some discomfort. And people like go on bike tours and they get like special sham butter for their butts because they develop all these saddle sores. And it's like, maybe we're not really supposed to, as humans, to be on these contraptions. Much like in a car, we're not supposed to be sitting for hours just in this shitty position. Or when we're at home watching something on TV and we're sitting in a recliner, it's not great. We can walk forever and run for some of us, but we can walk forever. We're just built for that locomotion. A nice, gentle movement. And so yeah, that just kind of, and then like all the money and the gear overhead, which is kind of related to the mechanical hiccups, is like can be a lot more expensive than just living out of a backpack. So there's that. And then even like, I think the third thing, which kind of ties into the mental, it's like the mental or approach and how you show up as a cyclist, and a militant cyclist usually. Because I started out, here in Corvallis with the critical mass game to kind of get my feet back in the water. And that's definitely like a very like, fuck you, we're gonna take the lane kind of approach. And I still believe in that, but it still comes with a kind of you kind of have to have a little bit of that as a cyclist. You can't be thin skinned and share the road, because really the cars, it's not like all the car drivers are like this, but it's like they're either apathetic, they're distracted on their phones, which relates to the safety point, which I'll get to in a second here, or they're like begrudgingly driving because they really don't want to, but they have to in this culture. And all the infrastructure is designed for cars. Everything is designed from cars from the ground up. And bikes are an afterthought. We only have one little greenway here in Corvallis, and it's so lightly used that there's still a bunch of cars that go fast on it. And so it's like, what the hell's the point of a greenway if there's a bunch of cars on it? It should be any greenway, especially if there's just one. Like in Portland, there was a bunch, but if there's just one in one little town, it should be local access only, with a bunch of dividers and medians and traffic calming things, and so it just makes it ridiculous to go down as a vehicle. But they can't even give us that in like college town, USA, Oregon State, Corvallis. It's like, this crap. It's just, there's no money, there's no numbers. And it reminds me once again of when I was a vegan. It's like I was a fringe thing that the dominant culture did not support at all and was hostile towards. And I feel a similar way with the cyclist, where it's like they're apathetic, they don't care, there's no money in it. You're derided oftentimes. Drivers are annoyed by you. Some want to actually run you off the road. Like especially in the South, there's way more of an aggressive stance towards cyclists, and the infrastructure's not there. There's no shoulders in some places. I can't believe people go down the 101. Like, that seems insane. The vehicles are bigger now than they were 20, 25 years ago. Everybody has an SUV or a truck. I was walking yesterday and I walked across the crosswalk, and they were like 3 giant vehicles that all pulled up, and their grills were like eye level, right? They're huge. And so that creates blind spots, especially with the right hook phenomenon if you're hiding in the bike lane, which bike lanes are death traps generally because they're on high volume places too. And then the car, the big F350 Super Duty, is gonna get his mocha latte from Dutch Brothers, and he pulls a right turn, and you're traveling, maybe not paying enough attention to react defensively and pull back, and he wipes you out. Or even worse, you're in front of him and he right hooks into you and hits your rear tire, which I think is more rare, but that still does happen too. But yeah, it's crazy, and it's crazy. It's kind of like, if we really take a step back and you examine it, because I kind of came, when I was in Portland, I felt like I really didn't have a choice of cycling. I'm like, well, this is it. I'm just gonna have to grin and bear it. Like, going downtown was a nightmare when I did pickups. Not very fun to cycle downtown with all that congestion and stuff going on everywhere. And you had to take the lane. And luckily it was kind of lower speed, but there's just a lot going on. And it was stressful and noisy and dirty. You're just sucking in exhaust. And so here it's like, it's a similar thing where it's just urban thing, and you got distracted young college age kids. And the thing is, I didn't have Gen Z drivers in Portland because they were all underage. They were not old enough yet to drive. But within the last 5 years, they have all gotten, the first crop of, kids that were born in 2000, 2005, that range, that are all driving now. And it's like, how are these drivers? What's the social etiquette? What's the vibe? How are they relating to others in general? Has it picked up some kind of that vitriol and that othering and the alienation from the last 20 years of social media and all the other bullshit? I think that's definitely true. And then they're more distracted, which is the big thing, because they all have phones. They grew up with phones, and they are more casual about just popping down and texting. And I've seen a bunch of things, even just in my time here, where people are just on their phone when they're driving and they're doing dumb stuff. And I don't think there was some of that in Portland from 2013 to 2020, but I think it's gotten more popular. And like I said, with the Gen Z crowd being younger, young and dumb, when you're young, we're all kind of dumb because we don't know better. And it's crazy here even in Corvallis because like no one should even really be driving. Like if you don't feel safe, I mean I say that talking about the safety issues, but like you can walk easily everywhere and there's a free bus. And you can bike if you want, you know. It's like the thing is if you actually had half the population of the town that was cycling or other non-car usage, there wouldn't be a big of an issue. You would have to build dedicated cycling infrastructure to accommodate the masses of people, much like they do in the Netherlands, where it's a biking paradise and it's super safe and people don't even wear helmets because you're just like in throngs of other cyclists and you have protected, dedicated bikeways and all this stuff. So it's like, it's a joke. It's a joke here. It's really a joke. And like it's kind of weird. It's like I just feel like a lot of cyclists are just trying to put a round peg in a square hole or whatever the analogy is. They're just kind of forcing it because they're like, I really like cycling. I want to make this happen. Much like veganism, it's like it's not going to happen. It's not going to scale up. You can have little pockets of it. You can have little pockets of bike lanes and infrastructure in some progressive places, but it's not going to be to the point where like you're going to have dedicated Springwater corridor like dedicated bike paths across the country or in every major city. Like it's kind of a and then even the thing if you had dedicated bike paths, like if we had something like that here, it only connects you with so much. You'll have to deviate off of it to connect to a friend's house or a shopping establishment, and then you're back into the fray of sharing the road with cars and such. So it helps, but it's still, you're gonna have to battle it out. And I just don't like that feeling. And this is what somebody was talking about in a comment on YouTube, where it's like, true, like there's only X amount of people that are killed, and then three times the amount injured every year. I think it's something like 1,000 cyclists are killed in the United States every year, which doesn't seem like a crazy amount, but you got to remember there's not many people cycling, so it's actually a decent amount. And 40,000 people are killed in car accidents, but there's such a huge volume more. That's the weird thing about the car stuff is it's hyper normalized because it's just everyone drives all the time, and you think, oh, it's pretty safe, but not really. And but the thing is too, you're also in a cage, so you're more protected, and especially at lower speed, you're gonna survive tons of these things with maybe a little tiny things like whiplash. But anyway, you're super vulnerable as a cyclist, and I kind of never really. I mean, I took that for granted, or I thought people were wimpy for using that as an excuse. But I get it more now as I'm older and wiser. It's like, yeah, I understand like where you don't want to send your kid out there to cycle in this crazy world that is not built for them. You know, I totally get that. And I have empathy. And even like the bike bus thing, which is great, where, a bunch of the kids get together with their parents and chaperones and they form this like little mini critical mass. That's the way you do it. You have to get in big numbers as a cyclist and really take the full lane as a group. You make the freaking cars wait and you do your thing. And that's also a very like point A to point B route commuting to school, and that's very reasonable. But for most of us, it's not like, like the equivalent of that would be like, okay, guys, we're going to go like your local neighborhood, let's say, all the cyclists gather in the morning and then they're going to ride around to all their errands together as in like a big group, like a flock of safety. And that would be actually kind of cool. And I mean, in some ways we did that in Portland in some ways, but it was never more than like 5 or 6 people, right? We had just mini clusters. But if you could actually get like 50 people every day to do it, and then they would go to every little stop, and make a party out of it. But that's just it's not practical to sync up like that. But that's just the weird world we live in, and the kind of concessions we have to make, and yeah, it's just not safe, and I don't like. It's like that. Like I said, going back to that comment about somebody said he couldn't count the near misses and the feeling. It's like there's this feeling and a vibe and a tension that you get, and drivers get this way too. A lot of them because they have to get in the road and they have to pay attention. And they could kill somebody, if they're not paying attention. So there's a tension. This is one of the reasons why I always hated driving. There's this tension of responsibility, and you're operating this fast thing. And similar with a bike, you're operating a pretty fast moving wheeled thing, and you're also vulnerable. So there's a tension where you have to keep your head on a swivel. Intersections are crazy, especially during the daytime. I feel safer at night cycling because I can see the car lights approaching. They can see my blinkies and everything a lot easier. The overall buzz of the town is sometimes quieter too, and there's less traffic sometimes, so it's better to cycle at night. But then you can't get errands done. Is the double-edged sword of that. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's a bummer because like I was gearing up and I spent quite a bit of money, more than I have in a long time, on bike stuff, and nothing too crazy, but like I mean I've spent like 175 on the along 180 on the rock hopper, $30 on the mountain track, so that's $450 or whatever in bicycles right there, which I'll sell too, so I'll get that money back, and then I'm probably gift the mountain track to somebody. And then I spent like $50 on cycling related gear, or like apparel, like gloves and bibs and high vis stuff, and that's not too crazy. And I'll pass that on if the time comes. And then all little odds and ends, I probably spent like $25 on bike bags, trying out different bike bags and panniers, and and like I said, all that's pretty reasonable, and I can pass it on to folks or sell those and with the bikes. But there's just a lot, This thing is a mechanical contraption, and there's a lot more to it. Even like tools and stuff, Like I bought $20 worth of tools, probably $20 or $30, like Allen wrenches and a couple other things, some like bike pumps. So, there's more to it, and really like just to throw a shout out to why bikes are cool. They're fast. You can carry stuff way easier. They give you independence because you can actually like commute and go places completely on your own time frame. You don't have to worry about hitchhiking and getting the bus, and it's easier on your body. So it's like, yeah, I get it, but like the world, much like going back to the vegan comparison, the world is not designed for it. It is not. It is not. It is not open to it really. Uh, it's like, I mean, in some ways, cycling is more popular than veganism, obviously, even by the numbers. But it's just still, it's another fringe thing where like you're just not, you're not welcome out there on a large degree. You're kind of a weird little nuisance, and even like, I mean, literally on these shoulders of roads, they're just eking out a little existence and praying that people don't kill them. Like there's this guy, True Marmalade, who cycled as a cargo bike, so he's a big thing. But he's emblazoned in orange and has a like a tongue in cheek little sign that says "Please don't kill me," and like crossed out eyes, cartoon face. But it's like that's what it feels like to it, to some degree. It's like this sad kind of pathetic in a way, begging the dominant creatures on the planet, which are automobiles, not to turn you into roadkill. You know, and I don't think I can do it. I gotta still stick with my pilgrim mendicant core, which is live and have a pack simply, and to be helpful, and that should be enough.